want to look at this question from the money market related to the money demand curve, where we're given this money demand curve with interest rate on the vertical axis and money on the horizontal axis. We want to now first start by looking at how does an increase in interest rate on bonds affect the money demand curve. So let's do part A. Now, when interest rate on bonds increases, so this increases the opportunity cost of holding wealth in form of money rather than interest bearing bonds, because we know you can either keep your wealth in the form of money or in the form of bonds, right? So if interest rate increases, then that increases the opportunity cost of choosing money over interest bearing bonds, because as we talked about before, the trade-off that you face is that you can use money for transactions, but it doesn't pay interest. Bonds cannot be directly be used for transactions, but they do pay interest. So now more attractive to hold bonds, more attractive to hold bonds which pay interest. So money demand is going to go down. But keep in mind, this is going to be a movement along the money demand curve. The money demand curve won't shift in this case. Right, so there won't be any shift of the money demand curve when interest rate increases, right? No shift. Demand curve, no shift. So it won't shift. Like if I were to plot this over here, so if we just make this, this is I, this is M, and this is our money demand curve. So if interest rate goes up from I1 to I2, so we can see the money demand is going down. So there's a movement up the money demand curve, right? So this is the idea that when interest rate changes, so you have a movement along the money demand curve, not a shift. Let's look at part two. So part two is asks about an increase in output. Now when output Y increases, so this results in an increase in transactions that require the use of money. That require the use of money. So what happens as a result of this is MD increases. Now the key here is for any given level of the interest rate. Now for any interest rate, now for any given level of the interest rate, right? Like for instance, at this level, now money demand is higher. For this level, money demand is higher. So for any given level of the interest rate, money demand is now higher. So as a result of this, the MD curve shifts to the right. So in this case, there's a shift because the change in money demand has happened because for any given interest rate, so it has not happened because interest rate has changed, but rather for any given level of interest rate. Because we can see now at every given level of interest rate, money demand is higher, right? We can see this over here. For any given level of interest rate, money demand is higher, so the entire money demand curve shifts towards the right in this case, right? So this is MD, this is MD prime. So let's look at part C. Part C talks about increased access to ATMs. Now, when access to ATMs increase, so this makes it possible to carry out a given level of transactions while carrying less cash. Right, so it makes it possible to conduct a given level of transactions while carrying less cash. So again, so what this does is money demand decreases for any, again the key is this change has happened for any given level of interest rate. But here it has decreased. Right, so for any given level of interest rate, money demanding for this level, for instance, it has gone down and thus the entire money demand curve shifts towards the left because we can see that at any given level of interest rate, money demand is now lower, right? Wait, let me just make this properly. So for any given level of interest rate, now money demand is lower, like it's over here, right? So if I were to plot this, we would plot it like this, right? Like you can see over here now it's this much. It has gone down by this much. Over here we can see it has gone down. It has gone down. So for any given level of interest rate, money demand is now lower. So the money demand curve shifts to the left. Right? This is MD, this is MD prime. Because for any given level of interest rate, we can see money demand is lower. Let's look at the next part. The next part is that consumer confidence goes up. Now, when consumer confidence increases, so demand increases. Like if you go back to a goods market model, so demand schedule shifts upwards in a goods market model. And when that happens, the goods market model from chapter 3, when that happens, y increases. So when y increases, now we go back to what we learned in part B, right? The transactions. So there's an increase in transactions which required the use of money. Right, so we know that causes money demand to increase for any given level of interest rate. So we know that causes money demand curve to shift to the right. And we would have same figure as B, right? So same figure as B, where the money demand curve will shift toward the right from MD to MD prime because for any given interest rate, now money demand is higher as you mentioned, right? Now for this interest rate, you can see money demand is this instead of this. For this interest rate, initially it was this, but now it's this, right? So that's the key over here. So change in consumer confidence translates to a change in money demand to a change in output. Last part is credit card fraud increases. Now, as a result of this, there's an increase in frequency. Also, you'd prefer to make transactions with cash instead of a credit card, increase in frequency with which so this will obviously increase money demand for any given level of interest rate. So our money demand curve shifts to the right again. So the key here is to remember changes in interest rate cause movement along money demand curve and changes in income and other factors that affect your preference between holding money, holding a wealth in the form of money or bonds, such as, availability of ATMs and use of credit cards and and riskiness of money and other assets. liquidity of other assets compared to money, all of these factors which influence your preference between keeping your wealth in the form of money or bonds would also shift the money demand curve. Because when income changes or such factors change, money demand changes for any given level of interest rate, which will shift the entire curve.